The HECS announcement. I want to talk today about the HECS announcement. So for those of you who have been ignoring all the media this week, the Labor government have announced that they're going to cut 20% of all HECS-HELP STSL debt for everyone. Obviously that's good, isn't it? They're reducing all of our debt. So I'd heard this story going around for a few days, and what was on my mind was that the amount of HECS you repay is based upon your income. So cutting the amount you owe by 20%, whilst it's going to help, it's not going to cut amount of HECS that the average person is paying every week, fortnight or month. So I thought to myself, that sounds a bit funny. Like, why are they doing that? Because they're foregoing tax revenue, or revenue that they're getting in from the HECS repayments, which is just going to cause another gap down the line. So I enlisted the help of my friend ChatGPT. What I got down to was something that has been seemingly swept in with all of these implications, which I'm going to go through later on in the video. But it feels like the 20% off thing has been just something that catches the media's eye, and the rest of it has kind of swept under the rug. Let's dig into it. The Albanese government's going to cut 20% off all health debts. Cool. We know about that. Going to take place June 1 from 2025. Doesn't help you if you're like me and you fully repaid your health debt prior to June 2025. We won't see any benefit or refund for that. So it's going to remove $20 billion of payments. So what that means is the government are collecting $20 billion less, and they're spending more than they owe. If you put it out over the last 15 or 20 years, pretty much every year apart from, I think, 2 years, that's actually what happened. Spending more than what comes in. So now there's 20 billion less coming in, which either means Australia's going to go into more debt, or they have to find that $20 billion somewhere else. Now, knowing how our governments have worked in recent years, it probably means they'll increase the amount of debt and make that a problem for another time. Sooner or later, the debt gets to a point where it becomes a problem. That happens at any level, at a personal level, a business level, a government level. Critics warn it doesn't solve structural issues like high degree costs under job-ready graduates. I don't know what that means, but I can kind of understand. It doesn't solve the issues that education costs a lot, and it's going to keep going up by the sounds of it. So I had this little conversation with ChatGPT, and it's taken its information from The Guardian, the Herald Sun, and the Australian, but it still didn't answer my question of, well, what's the benefit of it now if it's not reducing the amount that the average person pays? So if I'm earning 100K a year gross, how much will this reduce my payments by? And this is where it opened my eyes up a little, because along with this 20% discount, there's a few other things that are coming in place. I think this needs to be talked about. Previous repayment was, once you started earning over 56 grand a year, you'd start paying HECS debt. And on 100 grand of income, you would pay 5.5% of your income off your HECS debt. That equals $5,500. So $5,500 a month. Turns out the new system, it's a lot different. So let's have a little play around with some things here. Under the new system from July 1st of this year, so that's already gone, the threshold rises to $67,000. But here's the kicker. You don't pay for HECS for any of that first $67,000 that you've earned. You only pay for HECS after 67,000. So you can see here there's a nice complicated table, but if we go back down to the bottom, it'll tell you on an income of 100 grand a year, you're paying $1,364 per year off your HECS debt. What does that mean? Well, it is going to mean a lot of money back in people's pockets. The first thing I want to say about this is, well, if you only just earn the average, which is 100 grand a year, under this kind of setup, and you've got 50 grand in HECS debt, you're never really paying it back. Let me explain. Like, if inflation is 3%, and that's what you pay back, then 3% of 50 grand is $1,500 per year. So if you're paying $1,364 per year, you're effectively never paying that debt back. Now, it's a different story if you become a higher income earner, because then your repayments will go up, and then you'll have the capacity to repay that debt. But for a lot of people that go through the university experience and they're earning an average income, they're always going to have that debt hanging over them. Where do we go from here? The debt's always there. Where does the debt go when someone passes away? If it's constantly building up and never getting repaid, well then by the time they stop working in retirement, if they're not working for another 20 years, that debt's going to compound. That long-term family wealth is going to go. I harp on about generational wealth all the time because kids aren't going to have the same opportunities that I had when I was 20 and grew up with nothing and was able to build a business and buy a house and other assets and all of that sort of stuff. People are going to have to help their kids. This is another form of keeping people in debt for longer, if that's the scenario. The other thing I want to say about this is going to increase property prices. Everything we do increases property prices, and this is going to be another. Speaking from a mortgage broker's point of view, all this is doing is decreasing someone's expenses. And when you're decreasing expenses, looking from a serviceability point of view of how much you can borrow, if you've got less money you're spending here, it's more money you can spend on the mortgage. Therefore, it increases the amount that you can borrow. And what do people do? They borrow the maximum they can. Sometimes it's because they have to, because of property prices. But regardless, that's what happens. We have a risk-seeking appetite. 27 years without a recession, you'll get that. So people will borrow the most. And this is just going to boost borrowing powers. You could say that this will help the economy. If you're purely looking at GDP, it's going to put money back in people's pockets and people are going to spend it. It's inflationary, actually. It will be interesting to see what outcomes people think about this. I'll be interested to see actually what you guys think about it because I'm just reading this today. Like I had 10 minutes to look at it before work and then I'm coming back to it now. It's the evening after I've done a whole day's worth of work, so my brain's not working the best. What do you think about this? What am I missing here? I'm sure I'm missing something. I think if I want to zoom out, I would say that if I put a list of all the problems the nation or our economy has, I would say that a solution to our problems of focusing on students' debts and cutting them by 20% and reducing the amount they're paying back to the government, I would suggest that's not going to help much. I would suggest they could spend time on better policy, things that are going to get this economy moving. How are we going to boost production? How are we going to make stuff and sell it to the rest of the world? Because that's where it's at, and Australia have been really bad at that. One reason for that is because our Achilles heel is the mining sector. The problem with the mining sector in today's day and age is they don't pay their fair share. I think the majority of us would agree with that. They don't pay much corporate tax, and it's arguable when you look at places in Northern Europe and you see what they're collecting, you see what places in the Middle East are collecting. It's fair to say that we're getting screwed on that deal. Love to hear your thoughts. Comment below. Cheers.